I was looking for my first Cobra, my first Terminator that I would own, and I was really interested in this car. It was a 2003 Torch Red 10th anniversary car, and I really liked it. It looked good. It was relatively low miles, had 39,000 miles on it. It was up in Washington State. There were some things about it that I wasn't too wild about, like it had the drill holes in the front license plate. But other than that, it looked decently good. I really wanted red or competition orange, and obviously I had gotten my competition orange Cobra instead of this car, but it was a very hard choice. So this was the first Cobra that I really negotiated with for a long time. I went back and forth with the owner of this car, and I was serious about buying it. I spent a lot of time looking over this car. I looked at these pictures for a very long time, looking at every detail I could see. Originally, I wanted a car that was somewhat stock. I was worried about getting a car that had been beaten on really hard, and it's hard sometimes to tell the history of a car just by looking at the pictures. Sometimes you can look up information about the guy who's selling it. If he's on the forums like SVT Performance that this one was on, you could see posts about him at the racetrack or asking questions about what tire size to run at the drag strip and things like that. But it was a beautiful looking car in the pictures, and it's really hard to know until you see the car in person. As I looked through the pictures, I noticed that it had the 10th anniversary wheels on it, but they were now painted black. I noticed that they had aftermarket ones in the rear, so it wasn't the original set of wheels that it had, and I wasn't really excited about how he had painted them black and red. And as you can see in this picture, the wheels were the anthracite gray color with the deep dish ones in the back. So at one point the car looked better to me. That's the look I wanted in the car. If it was going to be 10th anniversary, I wanted it to look like it was from the factory. But in this picture you can also see all the awards and all the information about the car. He had lots of certificates and plaques and things, which makes you believe that the car was well taken care of. So it was kind of a hard decision. It was hard to decide whether the car was in great shape and if it was a show car or if it was more of a drag car. As far as the interior of the car went, it had a lot of red. I remember one of the guys on the sale post had commented, "Holy red," because there's just red everywhere, and you'll see under the engine bay there's a lot of stuff he painted red too. But as you look at the interior here, you notice that it doesn't have the 10th anniversary shift knob, which is like a carbon fiber leather wrap. The bag is still there, but he did say that he still had it in the center console of the car, so that was good news. But the red was just a little too much. I didn't like how he painted around the bezels either for the instrument cluster, and just all that extra red just didn't look good to me. The seats were in great shape though. They looked beautiful, so I was happy about that, because the seats are really important to me, being 10th anniversary and the red and everything, so they looked really good. I'll have to say that they did look good. Although, as far as the interior goes, there was something else I noticed, and there was this plate he had installed for a nitrous switch, which is another concern I had about the car. It was a beautiful looking car. I really liked it. And as you start looking at the car, you notice that the suspension's really high in the back. The springs are for drag racing. It had airbags and everything to help it launch better. And you start realizing that this car was, it was quite a dedicated track car when you start getting into it. He had a lot of pictures of it on the big and little tires at the racetrack, and if you look real closely, you notice that the interior is missing in some of these pictures. The back seat's gone, the passenger seat's gone, and so you're starting to get the idea that he tracked the car quite a bit. You know, here's another really nice picture of the car, but as you can see, the red in the windshield there, you can see that's the inside of where the rear seats go and that they're missing, and that he had the seats out a lot as he was racing it. And so the more I looked into it, the more pictures I found of it at the racetrack. And in this picture, if you look closely, you can see it's at the racetrack with skinnies on the front, slicks on the back. And as you look closer in the wheel well there, you can see that it has some coilover suspension for drag racing. And you start looking into it and you realize this car has been quite a track car. And there's nothing wrong with a Terminator that's been at the track a lot. This is where these cars shine. A lot of people drag race them, and it's fun to see them like that. But you start to worry about how hard the car's been driven. And you know, there's a difference between being abused, and there's a difference between um, having fun at the racetrack and running it a few times. But when you start seeing more and more pictures of it with the slicks and different kinds of tires on it and stuff, you start realizing that the car was used quite a bit at the drag strip. So as I looked at and studied the engine bay pictures, you notice that the car had some nitrous on it. It had a lot of racing mods, you know, more red here in the engine bay on the coil covers, and you know, the part right here in front of the headlights there. And the supercharger was painted red as well. It's a ported Eaton. So the supercharger had been upgraded to a stage 4 ported Eaton, which is actually what I had on my Bullet by Stegmeyer. But it had, you know, an intercooler icebox, aluminum radiator reservoir, ram, clutch with a 26 spline input shaft, so you know it's been handling some hard launches and some hard shifts without breaking that input shaft in the transmission. That was a Liberty 26 spline input shaft. It had a tubular K-member and coilover kit, which is what the suspension is. And so that's basically the cradle that the engine sits on is now an aftermarket tubular one. It's supposed to take some weight off the front end when you're racing, so the front end picks up and weight transfers better, and it's less weight for the car too, which is good for racing. And in this picture you can see when he was putting it all together, and the control arms there are tubular. You can see the oil pan and the starter in this picture. And he was concerned when he was talking to me about the car that I would like it, because I've heard a lot of these clunk with the coilover springs and stuff. And he was concerned, saying, I don't know if you're really going to like the way it drives with the K-member, and if you buy the car, you can take the stock K-member with you, which is massive. And he wanted me to put the back seats down and try to wedge it into the car, which I wasn't very happy about. But my friend had a K-member like this in his GT, and it was really clunky and kind of gave the car a cruddy feeling when you're driving it around. So I know that that was kind of a concern, that he thought I wouldn't like it. But anyway, you know, it had a MGW short throw shifter. It had a 2.6 upper pulley, 4-pound lower, so he's running about 15 pounds of boost. You know, drag radials in the rear, custom painted wheels, fluid ion heat exchanger, PPRV delete, which is the fuel system where you take a valve out of the tank, and I actually might do that with one of my cars. I had a Terminator tank in my Bullet, and I did that. It helps you shift faster without the fuel having intermittent problems under pressure and things like that. But you know, other than that, it had 410 gears and 60-pound injectors and cold air intake, the JLT one, and like I said, the springs for the suspension. So it had quite a bit done to it that would make it a really fast track car. But I started to get concerned about all these mods, because when somebody mods a car like this, then that means they're running it pretty hard and they're trying to get really good numbers at the racetrack. With the ported Eaton, the car put down 503 at the wheels, but with the nitrous shot, it put 574 and 632 torque, and that was on a 75 shot, and I wasn't really excited about that. That worried me a lot. When you run nitrous on a car, you have such a good risk of melting pistons or putting hot spots on the pistons. And you know, I talked to a dyno tuner who said that when you run nitrous on a car, to do it right, it takes a lot of tuning and stuff to get it down without hurting the engine, making sure it's safe. So the nitrous scared me, because he said it was only run like a handful of times on the nitrous. But to me, if you do nitrous on a car like that and you've gone and gotten it tuned and everything, which is good, at least it was dyno tuned, but if you're putting enough effort into it to get it tuned and everything, that means you're going to be racing it, especially this guy at the racetrack. And I just didn't know how hard the car was actually run. So the nitrous scared me, and that was one of the deciding factors that led me not to buy the car. But I did try really hard to buy it. As you can tell, he had lots of trophies and stuff. He had this custom nitrous bottle with Arnold Schwarzenegger, the Terminator, painted on it. And you can see he's taken it to shows and won a lot of awards with it. So you can't say that the car was really in bad shape, because he did love it and he enjoyed it. And he did take it to car shows. You can see the pictures of it. It was, it was a nice car. I like this picture of him and his son. This is at the racetrack, and you can tell they're proud of the car and that they really liked it. And it wasn't that the car was just an abused track car. It was a car that the family liked and everything. But there was no doubt that this car was raced really hard. As I got onto his photo bucket and looked through some of his pictures, you could tell that he had done some really hard burnouts, which is fine. I know the cars are made for this kind of stuff, but lots of burnouts, lots of racing. And to me, if you're going to buy a car and you're going to spend a lot of money on it, like I was at this point, I was financing this car. So I was really worried about buying it and driving it home and having it, die out on me or lose compression in the engine because of how hard it had been run. But if you're going to spend so much money on a car, sometimes you don't want to buy somebody's car that they've run really hard. You're more likely to look for a car that's been nice, taken care of, never raced, and all that stuff. But the car was a 10-second car. He had run a 1080 with it, and it cut a 1.4 60 foot, which means he really launched hard with it and was able to get it going. And he was good at racing too, so I think he knew what he was doing. But anyway, I was kind of turned off on how hard the car had been driven, but I still wanted it. It looked so good in all the pictures, so I negotiated with him, and he was asking 18.9, and I told him I'd probably do 18.7. I had to go all the way up to Washington and drive it home, and all the parts came with the car, like the slicks and the K-member and all the leftover stuff, but there really wasn't any way to get all that stuff home with the car. He said that he was going to go to Disneyland with his kids, later on, and maybe when he goes, he could take the truck and take all those parts with him and bring them to me, but I wasn't sure if I'd really even get all that stuff, because I know that kind of stuff doesn't usually work out. But we tried to talk back and forth, and I said, look, do 18.7, help me get up there, get the car back. It's going to be $500 to $1,000 to drive the car home and everything. And but he didn't really want to work on the price that much, and I got real worried about it, and I had him send me some more pictures of the car, because I was really wanting a nice car. And this next picture, I didn't really like how swirled the paint was. If you look towards the right there, you can see where the reflection of the camera is. There's quite a bit of swirl marks on this car. Now, in its defense, Torch Red, I have two Torch Red cars, the Mach 1 and my 10th anniversary Cobra that I own now. And I have to admit that Torch Red is not a good car for swirls. You see them under gas station lights, you see them anywhere. It's just, it's really difficult not to have swirls. So I can't say that the car was in really bad shape, especially in this picture, because you can see the swirls really easy. But Torch Red is just a color that swirls show like crazy. So that is difficult to own a Torch Red car in that regard. So, but as I looked at the pictures, I thought, this car is okay, and it looked like it was in pretty good shape. It did have a pretty big scratch on the front bumper that he didn't tell me about until later. This was later on in the negotiations. He sent me this picture, said that a weed eater had fallen out of the garage and scuffed it up, which is to be expected. I know that no car's perfect, and with 39,000 miles, you can expect to have some bumps and bruises and little scratches and things. So it wasn't a deal breaker, but there was a lot of stuff like that. He told me later that I was like, oh, well, I didn't know that. I didn't know that, And something else I noticed later as I was studying the pictures was it didn't have an exhaust on the back. The cat back had been removed, obviously for drag racing. And so I asked him, where's the cat back and what's with that? And he said, oh, yeah, it's off. I have dumps on the back, which means after the mufflers, you just have the straight pipes pointed down at the ground. And I didn't like that because those independent rear suspension exhausts are hard to find. And I think he said he still had it and that he might be able to put it back on for me or something. But it was just a lot of this stuff just kept leading me to believe that the car was a dedicated track car at this point. And it was relatively low miles, but it had still seen a lot of track use and a lot of abuse and things like that. So this is a picture of the exhaust and the differential there with the red IRS brace on it. So it even had that on it to keep the gears, which is good. It had a lot of good mods to keep it safe and running hard, but I think it had been run too hard. He also said it had never been driven in the rain or snow, but it was pretty dirty underneath. Maybe the first owner did, but he didn't. I don't know. I will admit, though, that it was very tempting to have a 10-second car, especially when I was building up my Bullet at the time, and it was running in the 13s, and, you know, I had a lot of friends who were racing and stuff, and I thought, wow, I could have this car that would be so fast. And so it's not like I was completely turned off to the idea of having a 10-second car, but the more and more I thought about it, I thought, this is somebody else's 10-second car, and, you know, it might be okay, but it might not. So ultimately, we couldn't agree on a price. He wouldn't come down even $200 to help me fly up there to get the car, and not even the cost it's going to take to get it home and stuff. And so we just decided not to go with it. I had, you know, the financing all lined up and everything, but he just didn't want to come down enough, and we didn't agree on a price. So the car sat for sale for like 6 more months, and finally somebody bought it. And I was on YouTube looking around, and I actually found a video of the new owner with the car. And so this is just a little bit of the clip from YouTube. He's with his friends, and the car is a really cool car. He's proud of it. He's saying, yeah, this is a Terminator Cobra and stuff. And the car sounds really good. But anyway, I could see that somebody else had it now, and I contacted this person later after I had my orange Cobra paid off and everything, and I decided I still wanted to get a torch red car. And I tried to talk to him about buying the car. But he wasn't really interested in selling it, you know, but it looked like they were taking care of it. They were washing it and stuff. I asked him details about the car, and now it had 50-something thousand miles on it, and it has not been garaged. He told me that he had it at a friend's garage for a little while, but now it's just been parked out on the street for a while. And in the other pictures I could see the mirrors were starting to fade, especially the black parts around the folding mirrors were turning white from being out in the sun so long. So the car definitely is aging, and it's not being taken care of as good as it was. I know the guy still likes it, and he's proud to own it, but it's just not as good as it was. And you can see they changed some things, like the headlights, which is a shame because it had those factory Ford ones that looked like they were in great shape. They powder coated those tanks or spray painted them black for the expansion tanks for the intercooler and stuff. And they had plasti dipped around the back, and it was coming off, and the Cobra license plate frame was kind of deteriorating and stuff. And these guys were kind of funny to watch, I'll just say. If you watch their video on YouTube, they were kind of weird with the car. I even copied the link to this video and sent it to the original owner in the email, you know, the guy I had been trying to buy the car from previously, and he watched it and said, yeah, those guys are kind of weird. They're not the people he sold it to. So the person he sold it to turned around and sold it to these people, but it was definitely his car. You can see in this video too that they also had the valve covers off and powder coated or spray painted or something, so who knows what's been done to the car since. But it was a nice car back when it was a show car, and back when this guy had it, and I liked it so much that I tried to buy it back, but it didn't work out, and so I bought my own 10th anniversary Cobra just this year, and I'm really happy with it. It's actually very similar to this one. You know, the mileage was about 40,000. The guy who bought mine had bought it with 5,000 miles on it. This other guy I was going to buy it from, his had 8,000 miles on it, so they were both bought in 2005 by the second owners, and so very similar. Both mine and the other one were ported Eaton cars that put down just over 500 horsepower at the wheels, so very similar. Although I am very happy that mine doesn't have the drill holes in the front bumper for the license plate, and that it has the stock wheels on it, and that didn't have any of the interior pieces painted red. So mine is really what I was looking for, and I'm very happy I waited. Even some small details, like this is the heat exchanger of the car that I was going to buy, the one we're talking about here in the video. He had SVT painted on it, but it wasn't quite in the right font. And so when I bought my car, I was able to take off the front bumper, do it all right, get the right sketches out for the stencils and everything, and get that SVT on there the way that I think it should have been. And so I was able to do things to my car that I felt I did a better job at. But anyway, I really did like this car enough that I tried to buy it again, even after I didn't buy it the first time. So this is a really cool story about the red 10th anniversary Cobra that I almost bought, and um, I was glad to share the story. I thought it was a really fun one to share. I've been looking forward to sharing this one. Thanks for watching. Please continue to watch these videos. I'll put the playlist in here of all the Mustang stories. Subscribe to the channel if you're not already on here, and I appreciate all the really nice comments and private messages that I get. And people have gone onto my Instagram and found me on there and sent me messages and commented on this channel and just told me how much they enjoy watching the videos. And there are so many people who have different experiences and have thanked me in different ways, and I really appreciate the friendships that we've created through this channel. So thank you for watching, thanks for being part of this, and look forward to making some more videos.